When it comes to creating change of any kind in our lives, the way you show up in the world has a huge effect on how successful you will be at achieving the outcomes you desire. These laws offer a perspective that can be really helpful when it comes to calling in abundance and greater fulfillment in your life. And they also are a good guide to how you want to show up, especially if you're looking to make change. Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. I've wanted to do an episode on the laws of the universe for a while now because they've really shown me how to view what shows up in my life in a different light. Now, these are ancient laws that have been passed down from generation to generation in teachings and are thought to be intrinsic, unchanging laws of our universe that ancient cultures have always intuitively known. Now, first of all, let me say, as I've said before, I have some pretty strong beliefs that there have always been outside forces at play guiding me in my life. I became more and more conscious of them in sobriety, and it took me many years to understand that I was part of something much bigger, and it has profoundly shaped my belief in possibility over the years. The laws have also helped me recognize the element of cause and effect that exists, and just shows further evidence of how interwoven my thoughts, actions, and energy are within the world around me. Now, I think we're all so used to being inside our heads every day, and this helps us recognize that we're only a small piece of the puzzle when it comes to the universe and all it has to offer. So you may be thinking, well, how do these laws apply to me, and especially in relation to creating change in my life? When it comes to creating change of any kind in our lives, the way you show up in the world has a huge effect on how successful you will be at achieving the outcomes you desire. These laws offer a perspective that can be really helpful when it comes to calling in abundance and greater fulfillment in your life. And they also are a good guide to how you want to show up, especially if you're looking to make change. Now, I'm going to basically give you the highlights of all 12, and if they speak to you, jot them down so you can start recognizing how they show up for you. And to take it a step further, how you can apply them moving forward. The first and most foundational law of the universe is the law of divine oneness. This highlights the interconnectedness of all things. It says that beyond our senses, every thought, action, and event is in some way connected to anything and everything else. This really sets the stage for looking at ourselves as part of a greater whole. So how do we apply this? When we see ourselves as one with everything around us, it helps us look at how we deal with people in our lives or situations that bring about frustration, and begs the question, how can I show more compassion and acceptance? With this said, sometimes walking away from toxicity or dysfunction is doing just that. So when we think about taking care of ourselves in relationship, we may be applying this law by taking the action necessary to remove ourselves from a situation. Something for those of us who lean toward codependency to remember. Acceptance can also happen from a distance. Now, I know in my life as I get older, I start to see judgment so much more clearly as it creeps up. I catch myself more often, and knowing the law just helps to see things a bit more clearly. Often our judgment is a reflection of what we see in ourselves. So accepting that we are all imperfect helps put things into clearer perspective. Now, the second one is the law of vibration. Since all matter and personal energy is in constant motion, they are all vibrating at a specific frequency. Now, this law basically says that our personal energy affects our experience, and if it remains high, it will attract positive outcomes in our life. Now, we've talked about the importance of remaining positive and doing what I call thought work, especially when judgment comes up towards others or ourselves. This is simply taking a moment when these thoughts come up and asking the question, is this really true? And then introducing a different, more positive perspective. I like to think of this as elevating our mindset and keeping it free of clutter and false assumptions. That's not to say that things won't bother us and that we must remain happy all the time. It's just a good practice to stay out of the muck of circular thinking and keeping our energetic vibration high. Now, how do we apply this? In addition to elevating your mindset, there's also some great practices you can incorporate into your day that work on keeping your internal energy high. Few of these would include yoga, exercise really of any kind, massage, and breath work. All of these help to move energy through your body, which is so key when you're looking to raise your frequency. Number 3 is the law of correspondence. This law states that patterns repeat throughout the universe, and on a personal level, our reality is a mirror of what's happening inside us at that moment. So if your life is chaotic and fearful, it's because there is chaos and fear within. And if your life seems calm and grounded, it's because you feel peace within. So it's as simple as looking at any troubling situation in your life and asking what it's actually showing you about yourself and what requires healing within. Now, number 4 is the law of attraction. We've all heard about this one, undoubtedly the most talked about universal law. And this law is often used for manifestation. Now, the basic premise is that everything is attracted to you in your life through energy. In its simplest form, like attracts like, and you get what you focus on. Not only that, but you have to believe what you're seeking is possible to obtain in order to have it manifest in your life. It's actually similar to the law of vibration in this way. It's important to learn how to vibrate at a level that attracts what you're seeking. Keeping your energy high will attract positive outcomes. Now, when looking to apply it, think of it this way. If you want love but do not give love, you're sending the universe a mixed message about your priorities. One key thing to recognize with this law is when you focus on what you want versus what you don't want, it will show up in your life. It's just that simple. Also, a key thing to remember is the universe responds to energy, period. So it will not know the difference between positive or negative energy. It will simply pick up what you're putting out there. So if you're putting out negative energy into the world, it will come back to you. So just another reminder for us to be sure to keep our energy high and positive when looking to attract joy and abundance in our lives. Number 5, the law of inspired action. This one is actually closely related to the law of attraction. The law of inspired action is about taking those real actionable steps to invite what we want into our lives. One thing to note, often the inspiration comes from within. So inspired action is that gentle internal nudge. It's not always a plan of action. So when we talk a little bit about those little whispers that we might hear or a gentle nudge that's pushing us to do something or change something in our lives, this is what it's all about. Now, how to apply this is really about slowing down, getting quiet, and creating space for internal guidance. When we let go of our need to arrange and control how things will work out for us and are instead open to all possibilities, it makes room for new ways of achieving those goals that we might not have considered otherwise. Okay, number 6. This is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. It sounds pretty complicated, but it's pretty simple, actually. This law goes back to positivity and the importance of keeping our thoughts intentional and free from judgment. It states that on an energetic level, everything in the universe is constantly evolving or fluctuating. Every action is preceded by a thought, with thoughts themselves having the power to eventually manifest in our physical reality. There are those pesky thoughts again. They really are the seeds of everything that shows up in our lives. For example, have you ever been around a negative person and felt your own positivity depleting? That's just one example, but it can also work the other way around. Higher frequencies can actually transmute lower ones when applied with intention. So you actually have the power to literally elevate the energy in a room. And it all comes from your thoughts. Okay, number 7, the law of cause and effect. Now, this one is relatively straightforward and highlights the direct relation between actions and events. You need to trust that every action will have a reaction, good or bad. What you put out there may not come back to you at that moment, but that vibration, that energy you put out there has a ripple effect. If you're coming from a place of anger or resentment, if you put that out there, you'll eventually be affected by it as a result. Now, once again, this is about awareness. This law is one that has really resonated with me and is a great reminder that I have the power to choose how I show up. And as a result, I create my own outcomes. This is not always good news for those of us who feel like we're victims in our lives. It can really drive home accountability big time. I've realized, though, over the years that if I want to bring more abundance into my life, my actions are critical. It keeps me aware of the power I have, and I've become more accountable for what happens in my life as a result. Now, number 8, law of compensation. The law of compensation reinforces this concept of cause and effect even further, and is basically the concept of you reap what you sow, meaning your efforts to put out positive energy will always come back to you positively. And if you are seeking something, you must contribute in some way towards your goal. An easy way to apply this is to simply ask yourself, where am I being called to serve, and how can I support others today? Then take the action needed to do so. Number 9, the law of relativity. This law suggests that we're inclined to compare things in our world, but in reality, everything is neutral. Relativity exists in all things, and in the end, meaning comes down to our own personal perspective and perception. I see this so much when I think of social media. We tend to attach subjective meaning to and put a comparison lens on everything we see. Now, applying this law can help us understand the tougher parts of our lives with greater compassion. For example, if you're feeling badly about yourself, it could be because you're comparing yourself to others. Instead, it's so important to stay focused and appreciative of who you are without needing to play the comparison game. Now, number 10 is the law of polarity. This law is one of my favorites because it says that everything in life has an opposite. The key is understanding there are always two sides of the same coin. Now, this concept has been super helpful for me, especially when I'm feeling anxious or in doubt about my life. Knowing that polarity exists, I understand so much better now that with dark always comes light. And this has helped me tremendously through some really tough times. It is said that all contrast brings clarity. So if you're facing a difficult situation like a breakup or a health challenge, be sure to tune in to what the opposite looks like. That bright light on the other side can really reveal a whole new perspective on the situation. Okay, number 11, the law of rhythm. This law states that cycles are a natural part of the universe. Think about the seasons of the year. We often fall into the trap of expecting ourselves to be one way all the time, whether we're thinking about our health or even productivity. But that's just not sustainable. To apply this, take note of your inner rhythms and try to work with them instead of pushing back or resisting them. Feeling run down? Maybe it's better to give yourself some rest instead of powering through. I learned this the hard way this holiday season with COVID. It was a true test for me in patience and acceptance that self-care isn't always convenient, but it is incredibly necessary. Now, last but not least is the law of gender. The law of gender has to do with the masculine and feminine energy that exists in all things. It's important to note that much of our society has historically operated from a masculine hustle and do mentality, which doesn't allow for much room to just be. This is why taking pause to meditate and listen to your own intuition are powerful ways to bring the feminine back into your life if you're starting to feel off center. Achieving this balance between the masculine and feminine energies allows you to draw from each in a really powerful way and live your life with greater clarity and authenticity. So there they are, the 12 universal laws. Now, before you get too overwhelmed, just know that there is no pressure to integrate these concepts into your life. This is more about understanding them in a way that makes sense to you. To me, these laws provide a greater sense of how the world works and how I fit into the greater whole. It also teaches me a lot about the energy that I'm putting out there. To others, it may be nothing more than another perspective to keep in mind. However you wish to use them, there are no requirements here. Just a few more tools to use as you continue to open yourself up to the world around you, seek to better understand yourself and others, and begin to create more of what you want in life. With that said, until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.